Neverending Heart, by KYLA. The book is a work of fiction. The characters and events in this book are fictitious. Any similarity to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental and not intended by the author. Chapter 1. Thursday, February 3rd, 2011. Judith Lawson sat in the Oakland International Airport staring at her laptop, trying desperately to ignore the useless chatter from her sister's bridesmaids. Lucian Lawson had been friends with the four of them since high school and she loved them dearly. Judith, however, couldn't stand them. She thought they were some of the most envious, untrustworthy women, none of whom deserved Lucian's devotion, especially her best friend Karen. Judith wanted to reach across her seat and slap the taste out of the woman's mouth, but she promised Lucian that for the days leading up to her wedding, there would be no drama. She adored her older sister and would never do anything to ruin the most important time of her life, even if it meant keeping her mouth shut while Karen sat next to her complaining and acting as if the weekend was all about her. I still don't know why Lucian chose black for our dresses. I know people think it's elegant, but I think it's morbid. We gone look like we at a funeral, Karen said, snapping her gum as she crossed her arms. How long is this flight? And why we going to Texas anyway? I thought the wedding was supposed to be in the bride's hometown, not the groom's, she huffed. Oh, so don't nobody hear me talking, huh? Whatever. Karen rolled her eyes and continued to pop her gum. Judith grit her teeth and turned up the volume on her MP3 player. She tried to ignore Karen, but the woman irritated her, both by talking and popping that gum. It was as if she got joy out of making other people miserable and starting drama. Karen knew very well why Lucian's wedding was being held in Tennessee. She and her groom, Andre Veles, decided it was more sensible and economical to have their special day in his hometown instead of the Bay Area where they both lived. Andre had 12 brothers and sisters as well as a host of family and friends that he wanted to attend the wedding. Judith disagreed with her sister's decision to change the location and told Lucian not to give up her dream of getting married in the Oakland Hills to accommodate people who weren't even supportive of her and Andre's relationship. Though despite how Judith felt, she didn't harp on it the way Karen did. There was no point. Even if Lucian regretted letting Andre make so many major decisions while she made all the payments for their $85,000 event, it was too late now. They were minutes from boarding the plane to Texas to start Lucian's and Andre's wedding weekend. Hey, Karen said, as she waved her hand in front of Judith's face. Judith took a deep breath, then removed the earphones from her MP3 player. How can I help you? She asked, coolly. We were all saying how beautiful Lucian's wedding is gonna be. Don't you agree? Judith didn't hide her annoyance at being disturbed for such a ridiculous question. If you'll excuse me, I need to get back to confirming our reservations for the rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. Some people sit around talking about how beautiful things will be and others of us do the work to make sure they are. She rolled her eyes and replaced her earphones. Who does this bitch think she is? Karen snorted, as she looked at the other bridesmaids and back at Judith. She couldn't stand the woman and took every opportunity she could to get under her skin. Ol' ugly self, Karen mumbled, then chuckled slightly to herself. Judith was a lot of things, but ugly wasn't one of them. The 30-year-old black woman was naturally pretty with toasted almond skin and chocolate brown, doe eyes. Judith's smile lit up her entire face and added innocence to her round cheeks and pouty mouth. She was beautiful. One night after a few drinks, Lucian confessed to Karen how much she wished she looked like Judith. It was as if her sister got all of Edmund and Evelyn Lawson's best features and Lucian got all of their flaws. Her eyes and nose were too big and her lips too thin. She spent hours each day applying makeup and doing everything she could to make herself more attractive when all Judith had to do was wake up and she looked stunning. Lucian, who was most often described as cute, stood at 5 feet, 3 inches and had to count every calorie to keep her size 8 figure from ballooning back to a size 14. Judith, on the other hand, ate everything she saw but hadn't added a pound to her 5'8", size 6 frame since 8th grade. Lucian hated herself for feeling jealous of her sister. It wasn't Judith's fault that she was beautiful. And contrary to her behavior, she wasn't really a stuck-up, self-absorbed bitch who only cared about her looks. Judith was one of the most loving, generous people Lucian knew, and she often encouraged her baby sister to let go of hurts from the past and open her heart to people. Unfortunately, Judith was much more comfortable hiding behind the stuck-up, self-absorbed bitch persona she'd made for herself. Look, ho, you ain't gotta be rude. Karen snapped. I'm trying to. Oh my god, Lucian. Judith shrieked, as she tossed her laptop on the seat beside her and rushed to her sister, who came stumbling out of the restroom. Karen and the other bridesmaids rushed behind Judith to find out what happened. Lucian was crying hysterically with her hand over her heart and she looked seconds away from collapsing. Lucian, baby, what's wrong? Judith cried, holding her sister close. Lucian Bell, please, she said after a few minutes passed with no explanation. Andre, Lucian gasped. Oh God, what happened to Andre? Karen asked. Hey, he called off the wedding, Lucian finally said between breaths. She was close to hyperventilating. What? All the women shouted. Lucian relinquished her cell phone to Judith, who silently read Andre's text. I could never marry a woman like you. What the fuck happened? Karen demanded after she snatched the cell phone out of Judith's hand and read it aloud. The other bridesmaids were crying and asking how Andre could do something so cruel, and through a text message of all things. Judith, with tears streaming down her face, stared into her sister's eyes. They both knew exactly why Andre called off the wedding. It was something they feared could happen if he ever learned the truth. Lawson women don't get the fairy tale, Lucian said to her sister when the other ladies went to gather their things. We don't get the happily ever after. Judith went to get her laptop and purse after Lucian asked to be alone for a while. Karen had a fit about how much she hated men and that none of them were any good. You know what? I'm gonna call Andre's ass and give him a piece of my mind because this is some bullshit. She snapped, then grabbed her cell phone and dialed the number. Karen left a message as she walked away from the rest of the women. Humph, that's interesting, Judith frowned. Do any of you know Andre's number by heart? She asked, then watched the expressions on their faces grow suspicious. 2 weeks later, on Valentine's Day, Judith decided to surprise Lucian by cooking chicken Alfredo, which was her favorite guilty pleasure, and delivering it to her home along with 4 dozen roses in bright, beautiful colors. She knew her sister was heartbroken over Andre, but a few weeks of moping in bed was enough. Get your butt up, Judith scolded, then snatched the covers Lucian had tucked around her. Get up and wash your ass, put on something cute, and come have dinner with the person who loves you most in the world. Leave me alone, Judith. I don't want to get up ever again. Oh, you getting up? She said before snatching Lucian by the collar of her pajamas. Then she wrestled her into the bathroom and turned on the shower. Now get in there. You got 30 minutes to meet me downstairs. I'm not playing, Lucian Bell, she said when her sister rolled her eyes. Don't let me have to come back up here. 30 minutes, Judith said again, then slammed the bathroom door shut. An hour later, Lucian came downstairs in a long, black and white kaftan and the 6-inch heels she never went anywhere without. Her face was fully made up and her black hair in a neat ponytail atop her head. She was about to fuss at Judith for manhandling her out of bed, but she smiled instead after spotting the beautifully decorated dining room table and all the lovely flowers she placed around the 2-bath Fremont, California home. Lucian walked into the kitchen and wrapped her arms around her sister. Thank you, Matt. This is wonderful, she said, then began to cry. Memories of her and Andre's first Valentine's Day flooded her mind and her heart ached. Elma, girl, no crying. Not tonight. We're gonna eat this whole pot of chicken Alfredo and the lemon cupcakes I made for you. And then we're gonna laugh and watch movies and have a good time. That's the deal, she said, wiping tears from Lucian's face. Okay, Lucian smiled before taking a seat at her pub-style dining room table. Judith always had a way of making things look elegant. Even the dark brown, marble top table and leather chairs she often encouraged Lucian to upgrade. Judith covered it with a beautiful gold tablecloth and bought red, square plates and goblets to accentuate her red and gold design. This is really beautiful, Matt. And just so you know, I'm keeping all of it, Lucian smiled. Like she'd done every day for the past few weeks, Judith filled her sister in on everything that was happening with work, Sydney Reed, and their mother's baffling relationships with one loser after another. However, this time Lucian actually responded and participated in the conversation. I don't know what Mama be thinking, she laughed after taking another sip of red wine. I don't know what you be thinking either. Why don't you quit fighting it and gone and be with Sydney? He loves you, Matt, and I think y'all could be happy together. Quit running in and out of the man's life and... Anyway, Judith interrupted, not wanting to hear another speech about Sydney. You want a cupcake? Don't anyway me. Sydney's a good man who loves you for who you are. He's successful, very attractive, and he's devoted to you. He has to be to put up with the way you pop in and out of his life. Stop taking that man for granted, Judith. I know how hard it is to find true, unconditional love and... Look, bitch, I told you no crying tonight, she shouted when her sister got choked up. Lucian burst out laughing like Judith knew she would. Both of them went wild if someone else called them a bitch, but for some reason it was hilarious when they said it to each other. It had been that way since they were teenagers. Ooh, thank goodness, Judith said when the doorbell rang. Who is that? Lucian barked. Don't worry about it. Just grab your wine and come to the living room, she directed, making her way to the front door. Hey, heifers, what took y'all so long? She smiled, then allowed the group of women inside. What up, Lucian Bell? You looking fly as usual, Judith's best friend Jean Rojas said. The two of them had been friends since junior high school. How you doing, girl? I'm hanging in there, she said, embracing Jean tightly. And thank you for the phone calls and cards. I really appreciate it. I just wasn't up for talking. Girl, don't even trip. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you and that I was here if you needed me. Next to hug Lucian was Judith's good friend Ruth Hampton and her best friend Fiona Ann Riley. Judith, Ruth, and Fiona Ann were seated together at a Women's Day event 6 years ago, and they'd been friends ever since. You looking good, baby girl. And it looks like you dropped a few pounds too, Ruth commented, as she took a step back to inspect Lucian more thoroughly. Shoot, you probably need to get dumped more often. Fiona Ann nudged Ruth and Judith looked close to slapping her. Ruth was a cool person, but she had the bad habit of speaking first and thinking later. And even though they knew she didn't mean any harm, it seemed that a woman close to turning 40 would be better able to control what came out of her mouth, especially one who was constantly subjected to and hurt by the mean things other women said. Ruth, who was 5'3" and wore a size 10, had the same issues with weight control as Lucian. She swore the pack of Newport cigarettes she smoked every day somehow managed her weight. Though, her problem was more about where she gained the weight than anything. If Ruth had a choice, she'd pack the pounds onto her slender hips and flat behind. Instead, every ounce she gained went to her already protruding belly and made her large breasts even more pronounced. Men didn't seem bothered by it, but women were cruel in their taunts about her misshapen body. Ruth already struggled with feeling attractive since pretty and cute weren't words anyone ever used to describe her. Having body image issues as well only made her feel worse. However, Ruth wasn't one to let people get the best of her, and she did everything in her power to present herself well. Her makeup and long hair extensions were always flawless, and she went religiously every 2 weeks to have her eyebrows and body waxed, fake eyelashes applied, hands and feet manicured, and her face treated with European facials. Ruth spared no expense when it came to her clothes, shoes, and the intoxicating perfume she wore, although the smell of smoke often upstaged her exotic scents, and she had a certain charm that drew people to her. Other women may not have considered her pretty, but they couldn't take away the fact that Ruth had style. "Oh, shit, I'm sorry, Lucian. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings," Ruth said, feeling badly about the comment she made. "Don't even worry about it, girl. Come on in and grab a seat. Y'all want some wine?" Lucian asked, making her way towards the kitchen. "Girl, please, you know it's all about that Eli's Gold Passion," Fiona Ann grinned, as she held up the 2 bottles they brought with them. "Ghetto asses," Judith laughed, then took the bottles to the kitchen to fill Ruth's and Fiona Ann's glass. Everyone was surprised when Jean asked for a glass too. Their nickname for her was Miss High Society because she was bougie and acted as if certain things were beneath her, like sipping on a glass of Eli's. Jean, a biracial 30-year-old boutique owner, was caught up with name brands, status, and what people thought of her. It explained why she'd already started getting Botox injections, had her thin lips plumped, and gotten breast implants on 2 different occasions. Jean was often teased for being a white girl with a black girl's booty, and she'd laugh and say it was the only thing she inherited from her mother. Everything else, including her attitude, she learned from her father. That night, however, Jean wanted to relax and not worry about anything but having a good time and enjoying the only real friends she ever had. It came as no surprise that Judith invited her friends to come over instead of Lucian's. And in all honesty, Lucian was grateful for that. For years her sister and mother told her she needed to choose a better group of friends, but she always defended her girls. Throughout the wedding planning and especially after Andre broke things off, Lucian realized her friendships weren't as strong as she always believed them to be. It was Judith's friends who called and came by and offered support to her during the worst time of her life. Lucian's so-called friends barely phoned in when they did. It was only to talk about what they were going through. Most hurtful, however, was the fact that Karen hadn't called or come by once. The women laughed and talked over drinks for a few hours, Lucian being the loudest of them all. She was grateful for the company and the chance to feel normal again. Not that she was over Andre, but for the first time since that day in the airport, Lucian believed she would be okay. "Look, y'all my girls and everything, but you gotta admit it's kinda sad that we spending Valentine's Day with a bunch of broads instead of being somewhere with a nice, stiff piece of man meat," 36-year-old Fiona Ann said to the amusement of the other women. "I'm serious. It's been almost 6 weeks since I had some and a bitch is going bonkers. This chick hit on me in the club last week and I almost went home with that heifer." It wasn't surprising to learn that a woman found Fiona Ann attractive. Most people did, as she was a very pretty, very petite Puerto Rican with flawless, caramel-colored skin and the whitest, most perfect teeth. Fiona Ann was extremely proud of her body and showed as much of it as possible wherever she went. She dressed professionally at the office where she worked as a business analyst, but Fiona Ann always found a way to make her attire more provocative and sexier than anyone else's. Though, there were 2 things she always wore: 6-inch heels to give height to her barely 5-foot frame and bejeweled chokers around her neck. She said they were her signature statement and she never went anywhere without them. "Girl, stop lying," Lucian laughed. "You know you ain't into chicks." "No, but at least somebody wanted to lick my pudding pop." She just would have been disappointed as hell when her turn came around, Fiona Ann laughed. "I don't know if I could ever get that lonely," Jean stated, surprising everyone. She was normally tight-lipped when it came to her sex life and relationships. "I'm serious. I mean, I've heard people say that a woman can love you better because she knows what a woman wants, but I'm sorry, there's just some shit she can't do. Men piss me off most of the time, but I still love they asses. And I'd rather have a good stiff one from a stupid-ass man than to be with some chick who can't give me what I really need." "Which is what?" Lucian asked. "A good stiff one. Fuck a dildo." They all laughed before getting refills on their drinks. "So what about you, Ruth? Do you think you could ever be with a woman?" Jean asked, taking another sip of Eli's. Before Ruth had the chance to answer, the doorbell rang, surprising them all. Judith got up to answer it. "What are you doing here?" She frowned, instantly annoyed by Daedra's presence. And the fact that she was smoking only made it worse. Though Judith knew that unlike Ruth and her chain smoking, Daedra only lit up when she was anxious or stressed. "What do you mean?" Daedra asked, as she blew smoke out of her mouth and stomped the butt of her cigarette. "You said everybody was getting together to help cheer Lucian up. Me and Peter had dinner and then I came straight here." "Ugh, who invited that bitch?" Fiona Ann snarled. "Behave," Lucian whispered, playfully nudging her. Deidre Walters Banks was a 41-year-old married black woman who prided herself on always looking professional. The tailored, red pantsuit and white silk blouse she wore was evidence of that. At 6'1" and 170 pounds, she often looked imposing, and her no-nonsense attitude was intimidating to some. Always with a short, wrap hairstyle and lightly made-up face, Deidre was quite cute and didn't look a day past 35. She worked as a bank manager and had no sort of filter when it came to the things she said. In all honesty, Deidre voiced things most people thought but had the sense or decency not to say aloud. Opinionated and overbearing, she was often the last person any of the women wanted to see. That night was no exception. "Hey, ladies, happy Valentine's Day," Deidre smiled, as she entered the spacious, plush living room carrying a dozen red roses. She popped a piece of mint gum into her mouth and rubbed a dab of hand sanitizer over her hands. "Here you go, Lucian. I wanted you to know I've been praying for you, girl." "Well, thank you, I need all the pifianos I can get. And thanks for the flowers. They're beautiful," Lucian said, kissing Deidre's cheek. "Come on in and get comfortable. Can I get you a drink?" Elias seems to be the choice of the night. "Girl, please," Deidre snorted, as if she'd been offended. "I guess I'll take some of the red wine if that's the best you have." Fiona Ann and Ruth looked at each other and rolled their eyes. Deidre was always pretending to be something more than she was, as if none of the women could see through her. She was a miserable, bitter woman, and none of them understood why Judith befriended her or kept bringing her around the rest of them. "I'm surprised to see you, Deidre," Ruth said. "You're the only one of us who has a husband, so why wouldn't you be somewhere with him instead of a bunch of lonely chicks, you feel me?" "Hell, he don't want to be with her ass either," Fiona Ann stated. "You know what? Fuck you, Fiona Ann." "No, fuck you, Deidre. You always talking shit when you ain't." Hey, come on, ladies, not tonight. This is supposed to be fun," Lucian said, hoping to calm things down between the two women. "It was fun until she showed up. There's never a problem until she comes around running her mouth," Fiona Ann snapped. She was still upset from the last time they all got together. She poured her heart out and cried about the latest man to take her to bed, then never call again. "Damn, Fiona, what kind of poisonous pussy you got? Everything be going fine and dandy until you fuck him, and then dudes be out with the quickness," Deidre had blurted. "What's wrong with your shit?" Fiona Ann was mortified. And it hadn't helped that everyone at the table laughed hysterically about it. She was too humiliated to lash out at Deidre that night, but she had every intention of making up for it and letting the woman know exactly what she thought of her. "So anyway, Ruth," Jean said, trying to salvage their good time, "you never did answer my question. Would you ever sleep with a woman?" "I've definitely been curious about it, but I don't know if I could ever go through with it, you feel me?" Judith rolled her eyes. It irritated her to hear Ruth say, "You feel me," after nearly every sentence she spoke. "Y'all need to stop with your prudish asses." "It's really not that big of a deal," Judith interjected. "And how do we know this?" "You've been with a woman," Ruth asked. "Yeah, so. I guess I missed this damn story. When did all this go down?" "What difference does it make? People get all bent out of shape when sex is nothing but a physical act. If somebody puts their lips on your clit, your body is gonna respond whether those lips belong to a male or a female. It's really not a big deal at all." "Really?" Deidre frowned. "So you don't think there's any difference between being with a man or a woman?" "I mean, aside from the obvious, no. Your body is merely responding to being stimulated. Y'all the ones who get all caught up with being in love and putting significance on whether a man can make you come or not. He's supposed to make you come, and it's your fault if you let him get away with not doing it. I don't play that shit. Ain't nobody going nowhere until I get mine." Judith laughed. "Well, not all of us got a sexy-ass black king like Sydney Reed to knock it out the park for us. Some dudes don't last, and once they get theirs, it's a wrap, you feel me?" Ruth said, to the nods of the other women. Judith rolled her eyes again. "And like I said, that's your fault if you let it be a wrap. There are so many other things that can be done to make sure you're satisfied. He can use his mouth, fingers, or even his elbows and knees for all I care. I'm not a selfish lover, and I won't tolerate a man who is. And neither should you." "Okay, next subject," Lucian announced, as the memories of making love with Andre overpowered her mind. She never had any complaints in the bedroom, and her body ached for him as well as her heart. The other women felt bad for getting carried away talking about men and sex, not taking into account what Lucian was going through. They were supposed to be there to help get her mind off Andre, not remind her of him. "Okay, ladies," Judith said, as she came out of the sun deck carrying a large, red gift bag. "I have a little something here. It's my Valentine's Day gift to you. A coworker of mine started a new business making products that encourage women. She has t-shirts, aprons, and all kinds of things with uplifting, motivating slogans printed on them. Anyway, her latest theme is all about pink diamonds. So I got these," Judith smiled, as she pulled 4 shoeboxes out of her bag and passed them out to Lucian, Ruth, Fiona Ann, and Jean. Also in the bag was a watch that Judith bought for herself but decided to give to Deidre so she didn't feel excluded. "Go ahead, open them." "Girl, these are smockin'," Jean shouted. Lucian, Ruth, and Fiona Ann agreed, and the 4 of them put on the black patent leather, 4-inch heels with their initials and the pink diamond emblem artistically placed on the toe of the shoe. Daedra opened her box and forced a smile when she saw the black watch with the pink diamond emblem on the face. It was obvious Judith hadn't thought of her when she picked out the shoes for her sister and friends, and Daedra was hurt. "Oh, I'm gonna work these bad boys, baby," Fiona Ann grinned, as she modeled through the living room as if it was a runway. "Thank you so much, Mad. I love them," she said, embracing Judith tightly. The rest of them hugged and thanked Judith for the lovely gift. Lucian made a big deal about how beautiful the watch was and how she was going to order one, hoping it would make Daedra feel better. Ruth followed suit, but Fiona Ann took pleasure in rubbing Daedra's nose in the fact that she was the only one without a pair of shoes. All of them knew Judith well enough to know she'd ordered a pair for herself too, and assumed the remaining shoebox in the bag was hers. Judith considered giving them to Daedra since they both wore a size 9, but there was no way to explain the letter M being on the shoe of a woman's whose initials were DWB. "Well, I've decided to have a 40th birthday bash this summer," Ruth announced, after everyone's drink was refilled. "I'm going all out, so you know it's gonna be off the hook, you feel me? We all gonna have the time of our lives." She grinned and held up her glass to toast. The women held up their glasses in celebration. None of them had a clue that on July 30th, 2011, the day of Ruth's big party, all of their secrets would be revealed and their lives would never be the same. It was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning when Judith got up to walk Daedra to the door. Fiona Ann, Ruth, and Jean all had too much to drink to drive home and planned to sleep at Lucian's for the night. Even though Daedra drank a glass of wine, she hadn't been invited to stay. "Boo, I think I feel a little woozy," she said, blinking her eyes quickly. "Well, why don't you call Peter to come get you if you don't think you can make the drive home," Judith stated, making it clear to Daedra that she wouldn't be staying the night. The two women stared at each other for a few moments before Daedra declared that she was okay to drive. She turned to leave, but Judith stopped her. "Aren't you forgetting something?" "What?" Daedra frowned. "Don't play with me," Judith said, as she held out her hand. "Oh, shoot, I almost forgot," Daedra stated, reaching into her purse. "How much do I owe you?" 400, Judith said dryly, knowing full well Daedra knew how much she owed. Judith took the money. "Don't just pop up over here again." "But I thought, if I don't specifically ask you to come, then that means don't." "And pick that nasty shit up," Judith said, pointing to the cigarette butt Daedra extinguished earlier. She closed the door in her face. "So what's up with you and Daedra?" Fiona Ann asked, startling Judith. "Oh, nothing, she just owed me some money." See, I knew that bitch be frontin'. Why should the big bank executive with the college professor husband have to borrow money from us lowly people? "Stankin' ass bitch," Fiona Ann mumbled, as she made her way to the burgundy sectional sofa where Lucian laid out a pillow and blanket for her. The whole time she wondered what was really going on with Judith and Daedra. From the exchange Fiona Ann witnessed, she didn't get the impression that Judith liked the woman any more than she did. "So did you have a good time?" Judith asked, after plopping down on her sister's queen-sized canopy bed. She suppressed the urge to tell Lucian to brighten up her bedroom for the millionth time. The black furniture, drapes, rug, and comforter was depressing. Even the master bathroom was decorated in black and white. "I need to do a makeover in here," Judith thought, as she looked around the room with a disgusted look on her face. Lucian snapped her fingers to get Judith's attention. "Yes, I can honestly say I did have fun. I really needed this tonight." "Thanks, Mad. Well, it's not over yet. Look what I got." Lucian burst out laughing when she saw the DVD her sister held. "Where on earth did you even find that thing?" "That's the beauty of the World Wide Web. You can find just about anything. So are you sleepy, or are you game to watch it now?" "Yeah, let's see what Mom has been raving about all these years." Ever since she viewed the film at 19 years old, Evelyn Lawson declared the 1950 Born to be Bad film as her all-time favorite classic movie. It made such an impression on her that 13 years after seeing it for the first time, she named her first child after the main character, Erica Kane Carey. "Why in the world would Mama name me after this character?" Lucian asked of the manipulative, conniving Erica. "Is this what she thinks of me?" "Girl, quit tripping. You were a baby when Mama named you." "Hell, if anybody grew up to be like Erica, it's me," Judith laughed, nudging her sister's arm. "Come on, Lucian, don't read too much into it. The truth of the matter is Mama loved this movie because she's like Erica." "Aw, don't look at me like that. You know it's true. I love Mama to death, but she's shady sometimes and we both know it. But I'm sure dealing with a stupid motherfucker like Edmund Lawson can make you that way." "Don't say that, Mad. Daddy's a good man." "Bitch, check your motherboard because your information ain't correct." "Shut up, stupid," Lucian laughed, playfully hitting her sister with a pillow. "I'm serious, Lucian. Edmund Lawson and good man don't ever belong in the same sentence. It's because of his ass we don't know what a decent dude even looks like. We've never had an example of one." "I had one," Lucian said, sadly. Judith rolled her eyes. "Don't be like that, Mad. You know Andre is a good man. I messed up by not telling him the truth in the first place." "Maybe so, Lucian, but if Andre meant all of his claims of unconditional, undying love, then he would have had the decency to at least talk to you face to face. He would have attempted to understand and try to work things out. But no, his funky ass gone send a fucking text message. I think he just needs time to process everything." Judith frowned at her sister. "What? Lucian, please don't tell me you're sitting here waiting on Andre to come running back to you. What we had was real, true love, Mad. I can't believe it's over. Oh, it's over. Why don't you ask? Judith stopped abruptly. Why don't I do what? Lucian asked, with a raised eyebrow. Oh, nothing. I'm just tired and emotional and I probably need. Not gonna work, bitch. Tell me what I need to know. Judith let out a long breath before gently grabbing her sister's hands. There's a reason Karen's been Mia. Lucian thought her heart was going to beat out of her chest. She's taken it upon herself to help Andre get over you. After Judith dropped that bombshell, Lucian's sadness turned to rage. She was hell-bent on getting revenge on both Karen and Andre and talked about all the horrible things she'd do to them if she could get away with it. Maybe I am like Erica after all, Lucian said.